Hello, in this video we're taking a look at therapy gone wrong. I'm going to tell you about 4 of the strangest and weirdest things that can happen in a hypnotherapy session, and I want to make this point clear from the beginning. Although I've said therapy gone wrong, that's just because that's what people search for, but really it isn't actually wrong. Each of these things, although they will sound bizarre and strange, is actually a good thing, but it can appear to people from the outside as though things are going wrong. So if you don't know, I work as a hypnotherapist and I help people all over the world to overcome their fear of driving. And I would like to point out before we get into this that I am fully trained. I've been extensively trained both in real life and online. I've spent hundreds of hours in training, and if we do end up in any of these situations in a session, don't worry, because I know how to handle all of them and I'm trained. But there are many people out there who don't bother with training and just have a go at therapy, and if those people end up in these scenarios, they can be in real trouble. So let's start off with number 4, what I call baby voice. Now, when you do hypnotherapy with people, it often involves taking them back into their past to relive a childhood experience, because many problems in adulthood come from childhood, and it's like it's a memory that's been trapped and it's carried over into when you're an adult. We're not going to get too much into this now. I've made many other videos on my channel if you want to learn more about this and how it works and how to overcome your fears and phobias. But what happens is, with some people, when you take them back to their childhood, they actually relive it to such an extent that they actually talk in a child voice. So I've had this when I'm working with a woman who is in her 40s, and she starts talking like a baby like this, and she says, my friends are in the playground and they're picking on me. No, I'm sorry, that's a terrible impression of a child voice. That's the best I could do. But imagine a woman in her 40s, fully grown, dressed in a very smart way, talking in a baby voice like they're a child. Now, it can be quite spooky if you haven't seen it before, and if you want to see this, I'm going to put a link in the description to a video where you can watch someone who was doing street hypnosis, a very good hypnotist who was doing street hypnosis, and they encountered this when someone they were working with went back to their childhood. And I want you to watch the way that the person is acting, the way that not just their voice, but everything changes, their body language. They are, although a fully grown adult, acting just like a child, and that's because your mind never really ever grows up. There's no time in your mind. So however old you are now, you never get past the age of 7 in your mind. So the baby voice is something that can happen, and it seems like something's gone wrong. You think, oh no, he's transported someone back in time and they're stuck as a child. No. They're just reliving an event from the past. They're not stuck as a child. They can just come back anytime they want. And as with the others on this list, it's actually more frightening for the people watching than the therapist. If anyone is watching therapy, it's more frightening for them than the person involved. But we'll come back to that more in a later point. Number 3 is when you hit a repressed memory, which is when I say a memory has been locked away in a room for many years. So what this is sometimes something can happen in your life which is so traumatic that your mind kind of locks it off in a room, bolts the door shut and says, right, you are never going to remember that. But sometimes in therapy, that can be the cause of your problem, and you have to go and find what that thing is. Sometimes it just comes out by mistake, because you may be working on other things, and this is what happened to me in a session once. I was working with a client, and it was all going very smoothly. We were talking about things, and suddenly they had this look of like horror come over their face, and they started crying. And I'm thinking, oh no, this is a repressed memory coming out. Now, it's not a bad thing again. The thing is, it looks terrible from the outside, and anyone who's watching would say, oh no, stop it, quick, help them. No, that's the worst thing you can do. You have to let it come out, because the person experiencing it, although they're crying and upset, they're actually not. That's just the physical symptoms coming out. They don't always know what's going on. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But that's what happens when people hit a memory. Now, I'm not going to get too detailed into what these memories can be, but let's just say that I've worked with people who have remembered things happening in their childhood to do with their parents that they didn't know about. Really serious stuff. So yes, that kind of thing can come out. But that's what therapy is, right? It's about working through these things. So let's go on to number 2, which is what we call an abreaction. An abreaction is an abbreviation of 2 words, abnormal reaction. Now what this is quite simply, it's a bit like the last one, it's very similar. No one in the world knows how you actually cause an abreaction. It was said one of the greatest therapists of all time, Dr. Milton Erickson, actually knew how to cause an abreaction deliberately. An abreaction is when people experience something which is so extreme they go into what looks like a complete meltdown. Now, I've heard things about this, such as a time when a therapist was working with a client, and this was in front of a lot of people at a show where they were teaching people how to become a therapist, and the client started, I think, screaming and going absolutely crazy, and they were convinced that they were being abducted by aliens, and they thought they were being abused and assaulted by aliens, and nothing that the person they're teaching could do would bring them out of it. So an abreaction is when you have such an extreme, massive reaction. It's not just crying and screaming. I was always taught, if you ever wonder whether or not it's an abreaction, it's not. Because these are super rare. You may get one of these in your whole 30-year career as a hypnotherapist, but they do happen, and it's simply when the client looks like they're going through a complete mental meltdown, running around the room, smashing furniture, screaming, pulling their hair out, bright red in the face. It's an extreme reaction. However, as with the other things in this list, it's actually the best way to get a result. And when this person came out of the abreaction, the one I was talking about, they will have no idea what's happened. It can be an hour or 2 later, and they have no idea whatsoever what they've been through. So anyone else in the room is crying and upset and thinking this person is going through torture, and actually, when they come out of it, the problem has completely gone, and they've got no idea what even happened. So this is the thing. Although an abreaction is not necessarily what you want to get, it's actually the fastest way to blow out any problem. So let's move on now to number 1, which is said to be the worst thing that can ever happen in therapy, but actually it's the best thing that can ever happen. So let me tell you what this is. It's something known as a hypnotic coma, or if you want to give it the proper name, the Esdaile state, because this state of hypnosis was found by a man whose surname was Esdaile. So the hypnotic coma is simply when people go so deep into hypnosis, they kind of go down and down, then through the floor and into the basement, then another basement, then another basement. And this is a state where no matter what the hypnotist or hypnotherapist says, the person will not respond. Some really strange characteristics of this state are you can actually move people's limbs. into positions that will be quite painful to hold. So you can move someone's arm and you can have it sticking up at a right angle to their body. And if you do that now, if you're in a situation where it's safe to do that, you can't hold your arm out at a right angle to your body for too long. But people in the Esdaile state could do it for any length of time, 10, 20, 30 minutes. And it's what's used for surgery. People, including Esdaile, would actually do surgery when people were in this hypnotic coma. You could amputate people's limbs. Yeah, that's right, you could actually cut their legs off and they would not feel a thing. And it's said that people that use this Esdaile state for surgery get much faster and better results, and they are much better helped than they would be if they had an anaesthetist there. So it can be quite frightening for the therapist because the people just don't respond. But what's interesting is when this was looked into and investigated, it was discovered why the people wouldn't respond. Because people who'd been into this hypnotic coma, which used to be approximately 1 in every 15,000 people would go into it. What happened is when they asked the people, why weren't you responding? They all said the same thing. They said, because the state I was in was so beautiful, I just didn't want to come out of it. So you see, it's not a bad thing. You're not stuck in a coma. They were choosing to stay there because they didn't want to come out. Now, I don't know for sure that I've ever experienced this state, but I was working with a client once and they stopped responding to me. And they just said to me, Paul, I wish you could see what I could see right now. And I was thinking, is this the Esdaile state? And I asked them, what are you seeing? And they just had this massive smile on their face. And they said, this is beautiful. This is the most relaxed I've ever been in my life. And I never want to come out of this. Now don't worry, because there is a way you can get people out of that state. And this was found by one of the greatest of all time, Dave Elman. And if you want to read more about some of the things I've talked about here, especially the Esdaile state, there is a whole paragraph on it in Dave Elman's book called Hypnotherapy. So those are the 4 things that can go wrong, as it were, in therapy. But you see how they're not actually wrong at all. None of them are actually bad things. They're just things that look bad to people on the outside who don't understand them. But if you speak to people who have been through these things, they'll often tell you it was one of the most wonderful experiences in their life. Check out these other videos on screen now for more help overcoming a fear of driving. And if you want to work with me one-to-one online from anywhere in the world, contact me through my website, firstdrive.com. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you again soon for more videos.